Hello and welcome. I'm Nathan and this is my 2007 Audi A4 Avant, which I bought over a year ago for about $1,000. And if you've watched all the episodes up to this point, you'll know why that is. Now, in this episode, as the title suggests, I will be doing some body work. Yes, that's right. I'm going to attempt to fix the cosmetics on this vehicle. There are a lot, as some of you already may know from previous videos if you've seen it in the background. Now, fortunately, all the mechanics are pretty much perfect on this vehicle, but now it's just the cosmetics, which is my least favorite on any vehicle. Now, this is kind of a minor one, but this is actually where the tow hook hides. So when I bought this vehicle, unfortunately, the bumper got ripped off when taking it off the trailer. So this kind of damaged this whole sort of front end here. So I'm going to have to try and fix that. And then here on the passenger rear door, this is pretty nasty. This little scratch right here, which is now rusted. And I suspect under here where this door blade is, there's some rust under there as well, which I'll have to attend to. And then not to mention here, you'll probably notice this little scratch right here, but that should be an easy fix. And then on the rear bumper, well, this is where it gets a bit interesting because we have this separation right here. And then down below here, we have all this paint chipping. Yeah, see, I can just pick at it with my fingers. So this will all have to be repainted. So I'm a little torn with this front fender. I'm confused as to why this is got protective film on it. And the reason I know that is because around where the turning indicator is, there's a faint line that goes around it. It's just a cut mark. So there's some protective film there. And then of course down here where it's very obvious that there is protective film, and that's because this was chipping off. And I have no clue why that is, why they have protective film on this. And should I leave it? And I think the answer is yes, because if I do, then I risk damaging the actual paint underneath it. So despite the fact that I've accidentally already taken a little bit off there, I think I'm just best to leave it on and then just fix this. So I'm actually going to just use some rust converter and then of course primer it and then just sort of brush it on. And by no means is this ideal. I would never usually do this, but given this sort of amount of work it's going to take to make this perfect. And again, the vehicle will be wrapped in the future, so I'm not too concerned about how it's going to look. I just want it to be protected from rust, and I think by just doing that, taking the easy way out for this one is the best route. First, I'm going to use some rust converter and then treat with some isopropyl alcohol to wipe away the excess and prep it for paint, which now I'm going to use some primer. I'm going to use 2 coats of primer on here, and then I'll hit it with 3 base coat layers and then 2 layers of clear coat. Now it's time to move on to the passenger fender. Now this fender is not original to the car, so this vehicle was in a wreck before. So they had spray painted, or at least used a spray gun to redo this fender. And I'll be honest, it did not turn out very well. The clear coat was very faded. Although it did kind of match the color of the car, it wasn't very nice. So I decided that it'd be best to just redo the whole thing. So right now I'm applying 3 layers of base coat to fill in some of those small imperfections in the paint, and then I'm going to hit it with 2 layers of clear coat. You know what they say about paint work? Half the work is just in the prep, and that is very true. Okay, the car is now covered in wrap, but there are some areas before I hit it with the actual aerosol paint that I'm gonna have to touch up, like right here, and a couple of little spots with primer. So what I'm going to use to help treat some of these spots where there's bare metal and a little bit of rust still is actually this stuff right here. It's called rust converter, and that is something you'd want to put on to help treat those rusted areas and help stop it. It's not going to hopefully rust anymore, but it will at least stop the rust from continuing. So here's the first spot I'm going to treat. It's this little area right here. can probably see on camera, it's very tiny. And again, I don't want to have to sand that all down and have to use primer, spray paint, everything over top of it. So I'm just going to treat it as a little individual sort of scratch. And then once it's sat on there for a little while, I'll wipe the excess away. And I'm also going to hit this little area down here with some rust converter just on a sort of bigger brush and spill it all over the driveway, which is fine. Again, I just really want to get all this potential rust stopped in its tracks. Okay, now that this is dry, I'm going to take some rubbing alcohol on a cloth here and just wipe away the excess. So I got a little cap here full of primer from a kit that I bought a while back with this little brush. It's quite nice. Dab a little bit. We'll be putting 2 coats of primer on this. Now this panel, this upper half here, will be actually sanded down to 800 grit, so that will kind of smooth it out a bit more. And I'll be putting 2 coats of base on there, and then it'll be ready for the clear coat. Okay, so it's the next day, and as you can see here, I've got the primer on the body panels here, and even here at the front. So now I'm going to sand down all the body panels with an 800 grit sandpaper, doing a dry sand, not a wet sand, and then I'll be able to actually apply the base coat and then blend it with the clear coat. By sanding down the existing body panels with 800 grit sandpaper, it allows the new paint to bond to the vehicle and hopefully should be problem free. Okay, so here is the rear trunk, and you may be wondering, why the heck am I showing you this? Because there is something that I really need to address. Now, in this wheel well here, it looks to be okay, but if you notice here down in the bottom right-hand corner, and then also over here in the left-hand corner, you'll see that there's holes. Now, it breaks my heart to see these holes here in the wheel well, especially on a vehicle like this, because that makes me suspect that this was a towing vehicle, and although you can probably tow with these vehicles, not very much, I imagine, I wouldn't have bought this vehicle knowing that it's been towing, you know, a lot of stuff, because that wears in your transmission and your rear diff and all sorts of stuff. And not to mention, now I have to deal with these big gaping holes, and that's going to be, well, very interesting. So I cleaned up the rear trunk area here a little bit. That includes all the sides here as well, because those are just disgusting. And then I removed some of the silicone, and as you can see, there are all 4 holes on either side. So my plan of attack with this is to use some fiberglass filler, paint it close to what it is. I mean, this is not the same color as the exterior. This is more of a lighter, sort of a silver color, and the exterior is a bit of a grayer color, so it's not going to quite match. So I'm going to try and do my best to maybe even just use a touch-up paintbrush just to clean it up a little bit, rather than paint the whole wheel well, because I want it to kind of look somewhat close to factory. Welcome to my rear trunk canopy. As you can see, I filled in the holes here, so I used some Bondo glass body filler, so that's nice and smooth. And on top of that, I then used some glazing putty to help smooth it out a bit more, and same on this side here. So next it's time to hit this with some primer, and unfortunately, because the inside of the vehicle here is not the same as the exterior, meaning that the interior is more of a silver color, I'm going to try my best to paint match it with something I can get at the local store. And here are the results. I'm actually quite happy with this, although not an exact match. Considering what my options were, I think this turned out pretty well. So this is down to the last part of painting the actual car, that is. And in order to do this back hatch, fortunately, just like the side doors, there is sort of a crease right here, which is kind of be my basically cut off. So in order to paint this little spot here, which was the problem area, I am going to have to remove these badges on either side, which kind of makes me a bit sad, but I might put them back on in the future, we'll see. And then of course I'm going to have to remove this stuff as well, which is just where the license plate goes. So this is my crazy paint booth that I've created. There's a little bit of wind tonight, and also there's a car next to me, and I don't want to take the chance, so I've just helped, you know, build a sort of cocoon, partial cocoon rather, in order to help maybe just eliminate potential overspray on anyone's vehicles. So it's been a few days later and the paint is all dry, and good thing is I'm done now. I don't have to paint anymore. However, there is a little few touch-up spots here and there that I'm going to touch up later with a paint pen. And other than that, though, everything is complete. And now it's time to do a wet sand. And by that, it's just going to be a light 1500 grit and maybe even a 2000 grit, just to go over some of this clear coat to help eliminate the orange peel, and then give it a nice polish, and then it should turn out just fine. You won't be able to tell this on camera, but I can actually see where it's still a little bit high there with the actual clear coat. So I'm going to keep going over it, making sure I spray it constantly, keeping it wet. Well, here are the results. So it turned out pretty well. I'm actually quite happy with it. And especially down here where the problem area was, that's where it was, of course, damaged. And the paint match turned out pretty good. So now it's onto the side of the car. Again, same thing. Hit it with the wet sand, 1500, 2000, and then a polish. As you can see, there still is some of that orange peel, so I'm going to hit it again one more time with the 1500 grit to hopefully eliminate these higher spots, and then hit it with the 2000 grit. Okay, that's looking a lot better, so now I'm going to hit it with the 2000 grit sandpaper, and then I should be ready for polish. So I took off about all this tape here along the top here, and the reason I did that is because when I taped it, of course, because it's being a crease, it's a good cutoff point. However, though, I do have a bit of a sort of a catch there on that spot, so I'm going to use some 2500 grit sandpaper, get that a nice light sand, and hopefully it will remove that edge. Everything's been sanded down and polished on the actual body of the car, so now it's just time to put everything back together, and to save you guys the hassle of having to watch 30 minutes of that, I'm just going to snap my fingers. And same here for the front. And just like that, everything's back together on the car, and I gave it a quick wash here, and boy does it look a lot better than it did before. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of me working on my 2007 Audi A4, and it's been quite the adventure so far, of basically from where it's been to where it is now, and it's been a lot of fun, especially learning as I go along, even still doing bodywork as a learning experience to this day. So if you did enjoy today's video, be sure to hit the thumbs up button, and also consider subscribing so that way you don't miss any future videos like this, and also car projects and DIYs on my channel. Until next time, take care, bye now.